The first fire engine hit the gate hard enough to rattle the steel posts. Red light splashed across the rain like blood in water. The driver leaned on the horn. Nothing moved. The emergency override stayed dead. I stepped out of my truck and the cold rain soaked through my jacket instantly. The gravel shoulder squished under my boots. Smoke drifted above the trees now. Thick. Orange. Real. Patty walked toward the engine captain with that same polished smile she used at HOA meetings. "There must be some technical issue," she said. The captain ignored her and grabbed the gate chain himself. His gloves slipped on the wet steel. "Who installed this system?" he barked. Nobody answered right away. That silence told him plenty. The guard looked ready to disappear into the storm. More residents crowded behind the entrance now. Windows cracked open. Phones pointed toward the fire glow behind the ridge. Somebody whispered that the Holloway's house was near the north slope. Another siren screamed somewhere down the valley. Then another. I walked to the keypad and wiped rainwater off the side panel. Cheap aftermarket controller. Wrong voltage regulator. No county certification number anywhere. Whoever wired it had bypassed the emergency relay completely. My stomach tightened when I saw the cut conduit underneath. Fresh tool marks. Somebody had intentionally disabled the override. Patty noticed where I was looking. Her umbrella lowered slightly. "Do not touch HOA property," she snapped. HOA property. That phrase almost made me laugh. The captain turned toward me. "You know this system?" "Better than whoever installed it," I said. I pointed toward the underground conduit line running beside the road. Emergency circuits should connect directly to county access control. This one does not. Rain hammered the metal roof over the guard booth. Sparks hissed faintly inside the control box. The smell hit next. Burned plastic. Hot wiring. Water intrusion. The whole setup was a lawsuit waiting to happen. The captain stepped closer. "Can you open it?" I looked at the dead override panel. Then at Patty. She folded her arms like she still controlled the situation. "County authorization is required," I said carefully. Her expression changed for half a second. There it was. Fear. Real fear. A woman in pajama pants suddenly pushed through the crowd barefoot, crying into her phone. "My father is still up there," she shouted. "His oxygen tanks are inside the house." Everything shifted after that. Residents stopped defending the gate. Phones lowered. People started staring at Patty instead of me. She kept trying to talk over the chaos. "Everyone stay calm. Emergency services are handling the matter." But emergency services were standing outside a locked gate while smoke rolled across the lake. The fire captain grabbed his radio again. "Dispatch," he said. "We have blocked emergency access at Willowbrook Shores. Possible code violation. Notify county infrastructure immediately." My phone vibrated in my pocket before he even finished speaking. County alert. Automated. Emergency access failure reported at my assigned district. Patty heard the vibration because her eyes dropped toward my jacket instantly. Then she noticed the county seal stitched above my chest pocket for the first time that night. The rain suddenly felt colder. The captain looked between us. "You work county?" I nodded once. Patty stopped talking completely. Then the north hillside lit up brighter than before. The orange glow above the ridge turned into open flame within seconds. Smoke rolled low across the trees and mixed with the rain until the whole hillside looked poisoned. Residents started backing away from the gate. Nobody cared about HOA rules anymore. The fire captain slammed his palm against the locked steel again. "We are losing time," he shouted. Patty stepped toward him with shaking hands hidden under her umbrella. "There is another route," she said too fast. I looked at her. You locked that one too. The words hit harder than the rain. A man near the back of the crowd lowered his phone slowly. Wait, he said. You closed North Ridge Road last month. Patty ignored him. The captain did not. You blocked 2 emergency access points. Her smile finally cracked. Just enough. The guard beside the booth took one step backward like he wanted no part of this anymore. Water dripped off the brim of his cap. I could hear the gate motor clicking under strain every few seconds. Cheap relay. Overheated already. Then another sound rolled down the hill. A deep popping noise. Electrical transformers. The woman with the oxygen tank father covered her mouth. Somebody farther back started praying under their breath. I pulled my county tablet from the truck and logged into the infrastructure map system. Rain streaked across the screen. The captain leaned close while I pulled up the original emergency easement routes around the lake. Both roads flashed red now. Inactive. Who authorized these closures? He asked. Patty opened her mouth, but nobody looked at her anymore. They looked at me. I zoomed into the gate permits. My stomach tightened immediately. There was no final county approval attached. Temporary installation only. Expired 3 weeks ago. They had locked an active fire route using an unapproved private system. Worse than that, somebody had forged the compliance inspection code at the bottom. I recognized the inspector number instantly because it belonged to a retired employee who died last winter. The rain suddenly felt ice cold on my neck. Patty saw my face change. What? She snapped. I stared at the screen another second. This permit should not exist. Silence spread through the crowd in pieces. A few residents moved farther away from Patty without realizing it. One man in a golf jacket muttered, "You told us the county approved everything." Patty pointed toward the flames behind the ridge. Now is not the time for this. But it was exactly the time for this. The captain radioed dispatch again. His voice sounded sharper now. Possible falsified county documentation connected to blocked emergency access. The smell of smoke thickened. Ash drifted through the rain like dirty snow. Somewhere behind the trees, glass shattered. Residents flinched at the sound. Then came the worst part. The gate lights blinked once and died completely. No keypad. No scanner. No power. The entire entrance went dark except for emergency flashers reflecting off wet pavement. The guard looked at Patty. "Ma'am. I think the backup battery failed." She stared at the dead panel like it had betrayed her personally. I walked toward the control box with my flashlight. Water pooled beneath the cracked conduit line. Sparks flickered underneath. Somebody had wired the backup system wrong. One hard storm was all it took. I crouched beside the damaged panel while rain hammered my shoulders. Then I noticed fresh scrape marks near the lower lock housing. Somebody had opened this box recently. Rainwater streamed down the side of the control box while I aimed my flashlight into the cracked lower panel. Fresh scratches covered the screws. Not weather damage. Tool damage. Somebody had forced this thing open recently and rushed the job afterward. The fire captain crouched beside me. Smoke rolled over the trees behind us in thick gray waves. "Can you bypass it?" he asked. I ran my fingers along the melted relay housing. Hot plastic stuck to my glove. "Not safely from here." Another loud pop echoed from the ridge. Residents turned toward the flames again. The woman with the oxygen tank started crying quietly into both hands. Patty stepped closer through the rain. Her heels sank into the mud near the curb. "This gate passed inspection," she snapped. I looked up at her. Water dripped off the brim of my flashlight. No. Somebody made it look like it did. That landed hard. One resident actually laughed under his breath. Not because it was funny. Because panic was starting to crack people open. The guard swallowed hard beside the booth. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I told maintenance we needed the county override installed." Patty whipped toward him instantly. "This is not the time." But he kept going anyway. "The contractor said it cost extra." Silence hit again. The captain slowly stood up. His face looked different now. Less frustrated. More focused. "Who hired the contractor?" Nobody answered immediately. The rain hammered the dead gate. Sirens stacked behind us on the highway shoulder. Emergency crews kept arriving with nowhere to go. Their red lights reflected off the puddles like broken glass. Then a county sheriff SUV rolled up through the mud. Deputy Nolan stepped out wearing a soaked brown jacket and that tired expression cops get during storms. I knew him. We had inspected flood barriers together last spring. He glanced at me first. Then at the locked gate. Then at the fire glow above the lake. "Ethan," he said quietly. "Tell me this is not what it looks like." "Worse," I answered. Nolan exhaled slowly through his nose. Patty stepped forward immediately with her HOA smile back in place. "Deputy, this is a private community matter involving temporary equipment failure." He looked at the line of trapped fire trucks behind him. "Lady, private problems stop being private when firefighters cannot reach burning homes." The crowd shifted again. People were fully turning on her now. Questions started flying from every direction. "You told us this system was approved. Why was the backup disconnected? Who signed the permits?" Patty tried to answer 3 different people at once. Her voice got sharper every second. The calm mask was slipping. I opened the county records again on my tablet and zoomed into the permit timeline. One date jumped out immediately. The gate modifications were filed the same week Patty closed North Ridge Road for landscape improvements. But North Ridge was never under HOA ownership. It was county easement land connected to the utility corridor around the lake. My chest tightened when I realized what she had done. She had blocked both emergency routes to force all traffic through the new luxury entrance. Better photos. Better home values. Cleaner branding for real estate listings. She gambled the entire ridge on appearance. Another engine exploded somewhere uphill. A bright flash lit the clouds orange for half a second. The crowd gasped together this time. Deputy Nolan looked toward the flames, then back at me. "Tell me there is another way in." I stared past the gate toward the dark woods near the shoreline. There was one route left. Barely. The old shoreline route had not been used in almost 8 years. Most people in Willowbrook did not even know it existed anymore. But I knew every inch of it. My grandfather built sections of that gravel service path himself after the flood of 1978. It wrapped behind the lake, cut through cedar trees, and connected directly to the utility corridor near the Ridge homes. Narrow. Muddy. Dangerous in heavy rain. But still usable if you knew where the ground held firm. Deputy Nolan stepped closer while rainwater dripped off his hat brim. "Can engines fit through?" "Single file," I said. "Barely." The fire captain was already shouting orders behind us before I finished speaking. Crews started turning trucks around in the middle of the road. Tires sprayed muddy water everywhere. The air smelled like diesel smoke and wet pine bark. Patty stared at me through the rain. "That trail is private property." I almost smiled at that. Exactly. Her face tightened instantly. She finally understood where this was going. The old service road crossed my family land before reaching the ridge. The same land she spent 6 months trying to absorb into her gated community branding campaign. The same road her HOA lawyers called non-essential access infrastructure during zoning meetings. Now firefighters needed it to save half her neighborhood. A resident in a soaked golf jacket pointed at her. You told us his road was abandoned. Nobody defended her this time. I walked back to my truck and unlocked the steel toolbox in the bed. Flashlights. Road flares. Survey stakes. County utility keys. I grabbed what I needed while thunder rolled across the lake. The woman with the oxygen tank father followed close behind me. Please, she whispered. Her mascara had mixed with rainwater down her cheeks. Please help them. I nodded once. No speeches. No drama. Just movement. The captain climbed into his engine and waved for me to lead. Patty suddenly stepped into the road in front of my truck. You cannot authorize emergency traffic through unregistered private land. Even Nolan looked stunned hearing that sentence out loud. Behind her, homes were burning. She still sounded like she was arguing at an HOA board meeting over mailbox paint. I leaned out the window. Watch me. The residents heard it. So did she. Her umbrella shook slightly in the wind. Then another resident spoke up. Older man. Gray beard. Expensive rain jacket soaked dark at the shoulders. My granddaughter is up. There. Patty turned toward him, but he cut her off. Move. That one word carried more weight than all her HOA authority combined. She stepped aside slowly. Tires crunched over gravel as I pulled away from the dead gate. Fire engines followed close behind me in a line of flashing red lights and spray mist. We crossed the narrow shoreline path carefully. Branches scraped metal. Mud splashed against the doors. Water from the lake surged dangerously close to the edge in some places. One wrong turn and a 30,000-pound engine could slide straight into black water. The crews stayed tight behind me anyway. They trusted the road more than the gate now. Halfway through the trees, my headlights swept across something strange nailed to a cedar post beside the trail. Fresh white signage. Private access closed by order of Willowbrook Shores HOA. The sign looked brand new. Rain had not even faded the ink yet. I slowed the truck for half a second. Somebody had tried shutting down this route too. And judging by the fresh tire tracks in the mud, they had been here recently. The fresh HOA sign swung in the storm wind while my headlights lit up deep tire grooves cutting across the mud beside it. Somebody had driven down this trail recently. Not maintenance trucks. Not county crews. The tread pattern was too clean. Luxury SUV tires. Wide. Expensive. I slowed near the cedar post and leaned out the window. The bolts holding the sign were still shiny. Installed within the last 48 hours. The fire engine behind me blasted its horn once. Smoke was getting thicker ahead. I pushed forward again. Branches scraped both sides of the truck hard enough to make the mirrors shake. Rain pounded the windshield so fast the wipers could barely keep up. Then the shoreline trail bent left around the lake, and the fire finally came into full view. Flames climbed out of the holloway's roof like a furnace door had burst open. Orange light reflected across black lake water and wet docks. Firefighters jumped from the engines before the trucks fully stopped. Hoses hit the ground. Radios crackled non-stop. The smell changed instantly here. Burned insulation. Melted plastic. Wet cedar smoke. Residents stood in the rain wrapped in blankets while emergency crews moved around them. The older man from the gate grabbed my arm when I stepped out. My granddaughter made it out, he said breathlessly. Thank God. I nodded once and kept moving. A second house farther uphill had smoke pouring from the attic now. Embers were blowing through the trees toward neighboring roofs. This whole ridge was minutes away from becoming a chain reaction. The captain shouted over the storm. We need hydrant pressure now. I looked uphill toward the utility access station beside the retaining wall. Another bad feeling hit my stomach immediately. The service gate was shut too. Fresh chain. Fresh lock. I walked through ankle-deep mud toward it while rain soaked through my jeans. Somebody from the HOA had locked the utility corridor. Again. I shined my flashlight across the steel housing. New scratches around the latch. Same cheap hardware store chain used at the front gate. Whoever did this wanted total control over every access point around the lake. Even the utility lines. The captain reached me a second later. Tell me this one opens. I stared at the lock. Not with a key. He looked at me sharply. Then how? I pointed toward the county utility meter mounted beside the fence. That station powers the emergency water boosters for this side of the ridge. The override should never be locked behind private access. Another firefighter jogged over carrying a soaked clipboard. Pressure is dropping, he warned. Hydrants are losing flow. The captain swore under his breath. Rainwater poured off his helmet brim. I crouched beside the utility panel and wiped mud off the serial plate. Then I froze. The county inspection tag had been peeled off intentionally. Half the adhesive still clung to the metal. Somebody did not just cut corners here. Somebody actively erased county oversight. Behind us, another transformer burst with a bright green flash. Residents screamed. The second house roof caught fully after that. Heat rolled through the rain in heavy waves. Firefighters stretched another hose uphill while the captain grabbed his radio again. Dispatch, we may have compromised. Hydrant infrastructure connected to unauthorized access control. His voice sounded furious now. Not stressed. Furious. I stood back up slowly while water dripped from my sleeves. Then my flashlight swept across a familiar logo stamped onto the new utility lock. Whitmore Property Solutions. Patty's Family Company. The Whitmore Property Solutions logo sat under my flashlight beam while rainwater dripped off the lock in steady streams. Deputy Nolan stared at it beside me without saying a word. He did not need to. We both knew what it meant. Patty's company had installed the barriers personally. Not some random contractor. Not a misunderstanding. Her family business physically locked down county utility access during fire season. Behind us, hydrant pressure dropped again. I heard it in the hoses first. The sharp hiss softened into an uneven sputter. Firefighters started shouting uphill. The captain slammed his helmet against the side of the utility fence in frustration. We are losing water, he barked. Smoke rolled low across the road now. Thick enough to sting my eyes. The heat coming off the second house pushed through the rain in heavy waves. Residents huddled near the shoreline while embers drifted over parked cars and soaked lawns. Then Patty's Lexus appeared at the end of the service road. Headlights bounced across the mud while she drove too fast toward the ridge. Deputy Nolan turned immediately. Stay here, he warned me. But I followed anyway. Tires spun as Patty stopped beside the utility gate. Her perfect hair was gone now. Rain plastered loose strands against her face. For the first time all night, she looked scared instead of angry. She climbed out holding a ring of keys with shaking hands. I can open it, she said breathlessly. The captain stepped directly in front of her. Why was it locked? She froze for half a second. Security concerns. Nobody answered that. The silence around her felt ugly. She fumbled through the keys while firefighters kept glancing uphill toward the growing flames. Then came another problem. The key would not turn. Patty tried again, harder this time. Metal scraped loudly in the rain. Nothing. Her face drained white. It worked before. The captain looked ready to explode. I stepped closer and aimed my flashlight at the lock core. Mud packed inside the mechanism. Fresh scoring around the cylinder. Somebody changed the lock recently. Patty saw it too. No, she whispered under her breath. Deputy Nolan narrowed his eyes. Who else has access to these gates? Patty did not answer immediately. That told me enough already. Then one of the residents near the shoreline shouted something that cut through the storm. The marketing crew. Everyone turned. A younger guy in a soaked polo shirt stepped forward nervously. They were out here yesterday filming drone footage for the luxury listings. Patty whipped toward him instantly. Brian, stop talking. But he kept going. Your brother said emergency roads ruined the community image. Nolan looked back at Patty slowly. Your brother? Another transformer burst uphill before she could answer. The entire ridge flashed green for a split second. Then darkness swallowed half the homes near the lake. Residents screamed as porch lights vanished one block at a time. The hydrants weakened again after the power failure. The captain grabbed the fence with both gloves. Cut this thing open now. Firefighters rushed toward the utility gate carrying equipment from the engines. Metal tools clanged against wet pavement. Patty stepped backward into the mud while the reality finally closed around her. Her gates. Her locks. Her company logo. Her family contractor. Every piece connected directly back to her now. Rain streamed down her face while sparks flickered from the utility housing beside us. Then Deputy Nolan's radio crackled with a new update from dispatch. A county investigator was already on the way. The county investigator arrived in a mud-covered Tahoe with emergency flashers cutting through the smoke. He stepped out wearing a dark rain shell and carrying a waterproof evidence case under one arm. I recognized him immediately. Marcus Bell. Infrastructure Fraud Division. The kind of man counties send when paperwork starts smelling criminal. He took one look at the locked utility gate and sighed through his nose. Tell me nobody touched this yet. The captain pointed directly at Patty. She tried. Bell's eyes moved toward her slowly. Rain dripped off the brim of his hood while firefighters worked behind us under pulsing red lights. Patty crossed her arms tightly. This entire situation is being exaggerated. Bell ignored her completely and crouched beside the utility lock instead. He photographed the chain first. Then the scraped latch. Then the missing county inspection tag. Every camera click sounded sharp in the storm. Interesting, he muttered. Very interesting. The second house uphill groaned loudly as part of the roof collapsed inward from heat damage. Residents gasped together near the shoreline. Embers swirled through the rain like sparks from a grinder. Bell stood back up slowly. Who authorized modification of county utility access? Patty opened her mouth immediately. Whitmore Property Solutions handled the installation under HOA authority. Wrong answer. I saw it hit Bell's face instantly. You just admitted your private company altered county emergency infrastructure. Patty froze. Too late. Deputy Nolan looked down toward the mud for half a second like he could not believe she said it out loud. The captain almost laughed from pure exhaustion. Bell stepped closer to the utility panel and pointed at the peeled inspection area. Do you know what removing a county compliance seal means during an active emergency? Patty's voice lost all confidence now. We were improving property values. Nobody spoke after that. Not even the rain seemed loud enough to cover the stupidity of that sentence. Bell looked around at the burning ridge, the stranded engines, the dead hydrants, and the locked utility gate carrying her family company logo. You compromised emergency access for landscaping aesthetics? Her silence answered for her. Firefighters finally cut through the utility chain with hydraulic tools. Metal snapped apart with a heavy crack. The gate swung open hard against the retaining wall. Crews rushed toward the booster station immediately. Water pressure surged back through the hydrants less than a minute later. I heard the difference instantly in the hoses. Strong. Steady. Alive again. The Captain pointed uphill. Push water to the second structure now. Engines roared louder as crews advanced toward the fire line again. Residents started crying with relief near the lake. Bell stayed focused on Patty. He opened the waterproof evidence case and removed printed county permit copies sealed inside plastic sleeves. "One more thing," he said calmly. "These signatures are forged." Patty looked physically smaller hearing that. Rainwater streamed down her coat sleeves while Bell held up the documents under his flashlight beam. "The inspector listed here retired 11 months ago. He has been living in Arizona ever since." Deputy Nolan folded his arms. "You want to explain that?" Patty looked toward the burning homes instead of answering. But the crowd around us had already decided. Residents stared at her like strangers now. One woman actually removed her Willowbrook HOA hoodie and dropped it straight into the mud. Bell sealed the forged permits back into his case carefully. "This is no longer a code violation issue," he said. "This just became a criminal investigation." Then another county vehicle rolled through the trees behind us carrying survey equipment and legal enforcement markings. The county survey trucks rolled onto the ridge just before sunrise. Their amber lights cut through the smoke while rain finally started easing into a cold mist. Fire crews still moved between the damaged homes, but the worst of it was over. The second house survived. Barely. Steam drifted off blackened rooftops and soaked pine trees while exhausted residents stood wrapped in blankets near the shoreline. The whole neighborhood smelled like wet ash and burned wiring. Marcus Bell walked beside the survey team with his evidence case tucked under one arm. Deputy Nolan stayed close behind him. Nobody paid attention to Patty anymore. She stood near her Lexus alone, shoes buried in mud, mascara streaked under her eyes. Every ounce of control she carried earlier that night had washed away with the storm. The surveyors started placing bright orange markers along the shoreline road first. Then near the utility corridor. Then directly across the front entrance gate back at Willowbrook Shores. Residents watched quietly as the county crew measured everything the HOA claimed belonged to them. Bell finally stopped beside me near the old cedar post trail. "You know what the funny part is?" he said. I looked at him. Rainwater dripped steadily from the brim of his cap. He held up a folded county plat map. "Your family never lost the easement rights." I almost laughed from pure exhaustion. "I know." Bell pointed toward the luxury entrance gate down the hill. "That entire structure sits partially on your access corridor." There it was. The final mistake. Patty spent months trying to erase my road from the community map while building her showcase entrance directly across protected county easement land tied to my property access. Every fake permit. Every locked route. Every modified utility line led straight back to an entrance she legally never had authority to build. Bell walked toward Patty after that. The residents watched him the same way people watch storms move across open water. Slow. Heavy. I could not hear every word over the generators and fire hoses nearby, but I heard enough. Unauthorized infrastructure. Forgery. Emergency obstruction. Civil liability. Patty tried speaking twice. Bell shut her down both times. Then Deputy Nolan handed her a printed notice sealed inside a waterproof sleeve. Her hand actually shook taking it. One of the firefighters walked past me carrying rolled hose over his shoulder. "Hell of a night," he muttered. I looked out across the lake. Dawn light was finally creeping through the smoke now. Pale gray. Quiet. The old shoreline road glistened with mud and standing rainwater, but it held. Just like it always had. My grandfather trusted gravel more than polished concrete. Said gravel tells the truth faster when something underneath starts shifting. Turns out he was right about more than roads. Residents slowly started approaching me one by one after sunrise. Different faces. Different voices. Some thanked me quietly. Some just nodded awkwardly. A few looked embarrassed for ever believing Patty's version of the story. The older man with the granddaughter stopped beside my truck before leaving. "You saved this ridge tonight," he said. I shook my head once. The road did. Down near the main entrance, county crews were already placing violation tape across the dead gate system. Bright yellow against black steel. Workers disconnected the private scanners next. Then they started removing the decorative Willowbrook Shores signage entirely. Patty watched every piece come down in silence. The same road she tried locking me out of became the only reason emergency crews reached her neighborhood at all. And standing there beside the lake, breathing cold smoke and cedar air, I realized something simple. Gates only work until the wrong person holds the real key.